David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our special BCC meeting. It is Monday, April 14th, and I would like to call us to order at 2:03. And could I please have a roll call?
Of course, Madam Chair. Commissioner Camille Bustamante?
Present.
Commissioner Justin Green?
Here.
Commissioner Hank Hughes?
Present.
Commissioner Anna Hamilton.
Here.
And Chair Anna Hansen.
Present. Next, we will go to approval of the agenda. I would like to know if there's any changes, or Manager Schaefer?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, no, there were no recommended changes from staff to the agenda as it was posted for this special meeting on Friday afternoon.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Green, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go on to item 2, approval of meeting minutes. Request approval of July 11th, 2023 commission meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, move to approve.
Second.
If I may.
Yes, under discussion, Commissioner Green.
I found one minor edit, which was there was on page 20, it referred to the report from LANL on the impacts, and that it said that the previous report was from the 80s, and I think I had said out of date and not 80s, and so on page 20, there was a minor correction.
Okay, and did you give that to the stenographer?
I have not yet, but I was going to.
You can give it to Debbie.
I would happily do that, so.
Okay,
thanks.
that would be great. So with that, with changes, the maker of the motion, will you agree to the changes?
Yes.
And second?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I have a motion with changes from Commissioner Hamilton and a second from Commissioner Hughes. Next, we'll go on to consideration of proclamations, commission resolutions and recognition, a resolution supporting the 12th annual Neighbor to Neighbor Fund Drive in coordination with the Food Depot. Commissioner Hamilton and Hughes. Who wants to take it away?
We'll start with Commissioner Hamilton.
Okay. So, we have, in various combinations of us up here in the commission, have brought a resolution supporting the food drive over the years, and it's such a great pleasure to do it. What the Neighbor to Neighbor food drive in support of the Food Depot does for our community, it's so monumental. It seems like such a small thing, but if you can imagine what our community would be like without it, and it's kind of at this point, they've become such an integral part of our community. It's the easiest way to see what a substantive contribution they make. And they make that day in and day out. And it's just so impressive to me, and it's so important to our community. So you don't have to take more time to say more, but rather I just want to encourage all the neighborhoods that have always participated and the new ones that haven't to put some real energy into doing this drive, because the results of the drive are put to such good use by the Food Depot, and it's sometimes hard to know how important something like this can be to our neighbors and our people in our community that we may not have daily contact with. But if we were to lose this, that would show us immediately how valuable this can be. And so I just want to really, really thank the incredible people who run the Food Depot and show some real support for this annual activity that we do. Commissioner Hughes?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with everything Commissioner Hamilton said, and I'm so happy she asked me to join her in sponsoring this resolution. The only thing I'd add is I'm so impressed with how the director, who's been the director for a long time, Sherry Hooper, has really grown the Food Depot into something much bigger than just a place to hand out food, and how she has led it to, have a vision for ending hunger in our community and, presented us with the plan that, we hope to be able to make some dents by following. But I think it's just, this is an easy organization to support and one that we should all get behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for mentioning Sherry Huber, and I don't know if she might want to mention other people, but it would have been remiss not to bring out how important the individuals who make this real are.
Yes, I agree with you for supporting this resolution for many years. I think the Food Depot is an incredibly important institution in our community, and I know that there are two representatives here, and if you'd like to say a few words, I'd like to give you a moment to say something. I know that other commissioners might like to say something also. Make sure you turn, it needs to be
on. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. Hello, Commissioners. I'm Amanda Briegel. I'm the Communications Coordinator at the Food Depot. This is Mary Ferguson. She's our amazing volunteer organizer of Neighbor to Neighbor. And we want to thank you for your support of the Food Depot and the Neighbor to Neighbor Fund Drive. I would like to talk about the Food Depot for a few minutes. And I want to start by just asking everyone here what they had for breakfast or lunch today. Maybe it was a burrito, a smoothie, a sandwich, but it was probably a choice, and you probably didn't worry too much about what you chose to eat today or thought too much about how to pay for that food. But for 20,000 people in Santa Fe County, 5,000 of them children, the worry about food is a reality on a daily basis. If a family or person is experiencing food insecurity, their household lacks consistent access to healthy food. With food insecurity, there is little choice, but there is a lot of worry. There's worry about high housing costs, low wages, medical bills, and childcare costs. With food insecurity, the option to afford something as fundamental as groceries must come second to life's other costs. We know food is fundamental to health, wellness, and happiness. For the past 30 years, the Food Depot has worked in Santa Fe and throughout northern New Mexico to increase accessibility to healthy foods to people where they need it most. If you've been involved with the Food Depot, you know our vision is simple: healthy, hunger-free communities. Our job responsibilities in this room may all differ, but we all have a similar goal at the heart of our work. We want the people in Santa Fe County to be able to live lives free of worry, healthy and happy. The Food Depot is working hard to make healthy, hunger-free communities a reality. Last fiscal year, our innovative programs and network of partner agencies distributed 9.5 million pounds of food across 9 northern New Mexico counties. Over 3 million meals were just in Santa Fe County through our partner agencies, our Thursday drive-through distribution, and our Food Mobile program. You are invited to be part of the Food Secure movement in Santa Fe County and across northern New Mexico. You can donate, you can advocate, and you can volunteer to end food insecurity in our community, because the Food Depot cannot do this vital work alone. We need volunteers, donors, partnering organizations, and without a doubt, we need you, our elected officials. Commissioners, we need your continued support to move people along the hunger continuum, to make sure more families in Santa Fe can experience full pantries full of food of their choice, to make sure no one in our county is food insecure. You, of course, all have an open invitation to spend time at the Food Depot, to come for a tour, to volunteer, because there's always something new and exciting happening at your food bank. Now I'm going to introduce Mary to talk about Neighbor to Neighbor.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you very much for supporting Neighbor to Neighbor for 12 years. It makes a big difference in our community. We have 5,000 kids in the public schools who go to bed hungry. So we have pantries in those schools, and the food is provided by the Food Depot. There's such a need, and it's only 10 or 15 minutes from where any of us live. So, and we can solve this problem. We can fix this. Last year, Neighbor to Neighbor, which is a volunteer effort, raised $294,000 for the Food Depot. Well, the Food Depot can provide 4 meals for $1. So you're talking about more than 1 million meals. This year, our goal is $300,000, 1.2 million meals, and we need to do that. It's important. The depot depends on us, and I can't, the depot was just voted a couple weeks ago for 2023 the best nonprofit, the best place to work, and the best employer, which is, as I view it, the triple crown for a nonprofit. So your money goes so far, $1 feeds 4 people, and we're trying to raise as much as we can. We have about 170 neighborhoods, groups, and businesses supporting us. We've got a lot of new support this year, which we're real excited about. The Santa Fe Opera, the Botanic Gardens. We've got a lot of big organizations that are important to this community that are now supporting Neighbor to Neighbor, and that will grow. Neighbor to Neighbor, people always get into it the first year, and it's not a big effort, but then they get it, and they really step it up the next year. So we're very excited to have all these people helping the Food Depot and becoming knowledgeable about what the Food Depot does. Because last year, 10 million pounds of food went out the door from the Food Depot right down on Seiler Road. It's an amazing place. If you haven't seen it, you should absolutely take a tour. It's only an hour. It's worth it. You'll be very glad you saw it in action. So thank you for supporting Neighbor to Neighbor. We have wonderful annual reports here. Amanda wrote this. I certainly didn't have anything to do with it, but love to give you one of these. They're very easy to read, lots of pictures, and really important information about what the Food Depot does in Santa Fe, as well as the other 9 northern New Mexico counties, 26,000 square miles. The fleet at the Food Depot is, are we up to 40 trucks? 30 trucks, sorry. But still, the little Food Depot that could, 30 trucks, and a brand new food mobile coming very soon. So it's exciting. Thank you for your help.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think everyone here completely supports everything that the Food Depot is doing. We have done it for as long as I have been on the commission, and I'm sure we will continue to do it into the future.
Thank you.
And I feel remiss I didn't go to 2 of my other commissioners. So Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you to the Food Depot. You've got a great team. That's one of the things I really recognize about a great place to work and a great team. Everybody, whenever I've been over there, has been wonderful. So in all transparency, my wife serves on the board over there, and then my company, my day job and my company also supports the Food Depot. So we do everything we can. We try to get the word out by literally with every sale that we make, we offer the opportunity for a customer to round up for charity. And so every few pennies helps, and then our company matches it. Whatever one of our customers gives, we match it as well. And thank you very much. And so I love what you guys do, and I love that we can step up and support you in any way we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Commissioner Bustamante.
I can't do anything without starting with a thank you. Like, everything that you do is so important, and I'm absolutely grateful. My question is, how do I help District 3 learn more about this and how they can participate to make sure that District 3 is supporting your goals?
I can send you an email that you could turn around and send to people in your district, or I'm not sure what's going to be easiest for you, but we'll try. I can make it as easy as possible for you.
Either way, I would say do all of the above. Easy,
okay.
Easy is okay, but it's an important enough initiative that I'd love to be able to get the word out. I will definitely take an email from you, and
okay.
Then if
we have flyers like
and then
this,
if you have flyers, I'll
yeah,
take some.
that we can email you and you can send in it's very descriptive. It's brief but descriptive.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, Do you want a hard copy now, or should?
You may hand them out, okay? If
Great.
you want the annual report. And I also would be remiss if we did not recognize Linda Flatt, who has done so much work on the Neighbor to Neighbor, and she's the founder, and she's done an absolutely marvelous job, and we are incredibly grateful to her for all her hard work. Yes. Okay, so I believe we have a motion and a second, or do we not have? We haven't. Okay, we haven't done that, so what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution supporting the Neighbor to Neighbor Fund Drive.
I'll second.
And so I have a motion from Commissioner Hughes and the second from Commissioner Hamilton. Under discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yay. Okay, so next we'll go on to item number 4.
Madam Chair, may I offer a resolution number?
Of course.
3A is resolution number 2023-084.
Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything on the consent agenda that they'd like to hear more about or have a question about?
Madam Chair, I'd like to hear a little more about item G.
Okay. I'd like to hear a little bit more about item F. Anything else? The rest of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with removal of item F and G.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Green, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we will go on to item F. Michelle Hunter.
Madam Chair?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
So is this sewer line a septic system or?
Yes. Madam Chair, Commissioners, the Sierra Vista is a small subdivision that is going in just south of where Las Campanas' sewer lines are. We did request that Las Campanas look at this and see if they were interested in perhaps providing service to this small subdivision, but alas, they were not. And so the only option at this point is for the subdivision to have septic systems instead of connecting to a sewer line because they're in SDA 2. And so, just...
So how far away are they to connect with the sewer line?
To the sewer line where either the city or... Las Campanas, it is very, very close.
How close?
I'm going to say a few hundred feet, probably 300 to 500 feet.
Okay. And to the city?
It's probably a couple of miles, at least.
Okay.
So it would be prohibitively expensive for the developer to do that, and they're not required because it's SDA 2. And so this is an area where we are looking to eventually have sewer system ability to provide sewer system there, but at this point, because it's north of 599, we do not have the ability to do that yet.
So did Las Campanas deny?
Yes, they did.
And what was their reasoning?
That they just didn't have the ability to offer service to this, and that they were just turning it down. They didn't really go into too detailed. I did talk to Brian Romero about it, and it just isn't, they're just not really interested in providing service anywhere outside their service lines at this particular time. So
But they have a basically half-used plant. I mean, they don't even use all of their plant.
they, Madam Chair, Commissioners, they do have some available capacity in that. Yes.
So is there anything that we can do as the county?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think the Utilities Division is embarking on a fairly comprehensive master plan very, very soon. And so I do think that that master planning effort will look at the potential for sewer service in that area and what the different types of scenarios for that could be, including hopefully some kind of regional plant or something along those lines. I think it will look at all kinds of different options and the feasibility of those options for that area that's north of 599 because it is so far from the Quill. So I think that there, in the master planning effort, there probably will be a look at those kinds of things, yes, for that area, for SDA2, because we really are determined to serve SDA2. We're just not quite at the point where we have the services available.
Commissioner Green, you have a question?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Michelle. Related to this is, and to where you were alluding to, given the current sad state of the city's wastewater treatment facility and the need for probably a whole new system, and the potential for a partnership between Santa Fe County and the city of Santa Fe on a new facility, this area here would be potentially served by a joint city-county facility?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Green, you know, in long-term thinking and thinking about things in a broad way, I would think so. I would think that the feasibility of that will be reviewed in this process, and I'm hopeful that something like that would at least be looked at for the feasibility of it. Yep.
Okay. Thanks. And none of this would preclude them from joining any larger system that we put together?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Green, yes.
This would facilitate this?
Yes.
But, you know, you put in septic systems, and I mean, that's an expense.
Yeah.
You know, and people are not going to want to abandon a relatively new septic system and when the same expense. I mean, I would hope that we could have some discussion with the Las Campanas Co-op, because I think that this is a regional responsibility. This is, you know, they might originally been only designated to service the Las Campanas area, but as growth happens there, and they have a system that is has capacity to serve other providers, other customers, it would seem to me that it would be helpful for them to consider this in the future.
Sure, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I had a meeting with the general manager of the Las Campanas Co-op about 2 weeks ago, and she expressed the fact that they are not interested in partnering with the county at this time. They do have unused capacity at their wastewater treatment facility. However, they believe that in their master plan, that entire capacity would be utilized as they build out their subdivision. That's their perspective right now.
Okay. I've heard that same.
Same thing, yes.
Same thing. I've met with her also, so I'm well aware of that. But it just concerns me. I'm concerned about septic systems, and I think that, having a regional sewer wastewater plant is something that we really need to look at.
Yes, ma'am. As Michelle alluded to, we are in the process of preparing what is called the Regional Effluent Management Plan, or REMP, and that's the IPR has been issued, and we're looking to Moles and Corbin Engineering to do that at this time.
So with that, I suppose that we need to approve this agreement, even though I'd rather see them connected to a sewer system. So I will move to approve of county utility line extension and delivery agreement between Santa Fe County and Sierra Vista Love Ranch Partners. Do I have a second?
Sure, so I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion from Commissioner Hanson and a second from Commissioner Green. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Paul and Michelle, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next, item G, Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think this is a good idea. I just was hoping that somebody, presumably Attorney Young, could explain how this is going to work, just so we all know how to refer people to be able to listen in on the meeting. And I read the material, and I didn't quite grasp it all, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Hughes. So what is before the board today is a resolution which would amend our Open Meetings Act annual resolution. And basically what we're doing there is to provide a website in Appendix 1 where the public can simply, go to that website. At that website, you'll see options for participation, which will be by WebEx. If the public wants to actually communicate during matters of public concern or at a public hearing. You can also click on a YouTube link, which will take you just to a viewing of that. And there's also a Facebook option, and I believe there is also a phone option as well, so that you can participate and communicate that way. So that link will have it clear, and it will be a streamless. It will just be a streamless way to access. Previously, we had included a specific access code and password to be used. However, when you went to enter that into the WebEx platform, you were limited to what WebEx made available to you there. In the case of our meeting for August 8th, a regular scheduled meeting, there was a problem with the link itself, so we weren't able to change and adjust that for the regularly scheduled meeting. This will allow us to actually change that if needed, but I believe that Daniel was able to also include actually what's a personal meeting room, which is adjustable as well. So there's several options for us to be able to react in instances that like this that occurred for the last meeting, and we hope that this will address that.
Okay, so basically, if we refer people to the website that's mentioned in the appendix, there'll be an explanation there of how they can join the meeting, and if one of those things breaks, we can fix it in real time so that we can still have the meeting.
That's correct.
Okay,
Sure.
Great. Thank you for coming up with that. I'll make a motion to approve item G.
Second?
I have a motion from Commissioner Hughes, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. For item G on the consent agenda, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We can move on to 5, appointments and reappointments. There are none. Then
Madam
we'll-
Chair.
Yes, I know. Those bothersome numbers.
They are tricky, aren't they? So item 4D is resolution number 2023-085. 4E is resolution number 2023-086. And Item 4G is resolution number 2023-087.
So next we'll go on to item 6, which is a request authorization of the county manager to submit a creative industries project proposal to the Creative Industries Division of the New Mexico Economic Development Department for a project with Reunity Resources to be implemented through the Local Economic Development Act. Community Development Partner and Department, Juan Torres. Welcome, Juan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Madam Chair, Commissioners. The legislature appropriated $2 million in one-time special appropriation to the Economic Development Department to support House Bill 8 through grants to provide funding for local government projects, programs that demonstrate the potential to stimulate the community or economic development through creative industries. The Economic Development Department is requesting recurring funding for this program to support creative businesses in New Mexico as part of its 2025 fiscal year budget. Applications must be made by political subdivisions of the state, with the local government acting as the fiscal agent. Reunity Resources proposes to partner with Santa Fe County in response to the creative industries' request for proposals with a project that will build 2 modular prefab buildings expanding 2 initiatives, the Saving Seconds and the proposed Cultural Center along the Santa Fe River Greenway. Reunity obtained funding from the state of New Mexico for a cider press and grain milling equipment. They propose to install 2 modular buildings at Reunity, one dedicated to a grain milling operation and one for cider making operation, both fresh and hard cider. Funding for the proposal will build capacity for Reunity's existing Saving Seconds program, which was state-funded with Santa Fe County administered procurement. This program supports the creation of value-added products from blemished and excess produce that would otherwise produce methane in landfills and farm fields, while also providing a new income stream for small farmers. Build infrastructure in anticipation of the opening of the Santa Fe River Greenway extension to San Isidro Crossing in 2024-25. Reunity and Agua Fria Village anticipate an influx of visitors when the River Greenway opens, and it seeks to position itself in as an engaging destination for both local residents and tourists. If the proposal is funded, Reunity Resources can have seasonal outdoor cider cafe in place when the River Greenway opens. Both of these infrastructure projects are directly related to business development in the creative industries by focusing on Agua Fria Village's history as an agricultural and artistic hub, and through support for small farmers seeking to create innovative, culturally significant products. There is not a required match for this funding, but the grant application does specify a budgetary supplement asking for how the grant funds will be used with current funds to achieve the outcomes. As mentioned above, the funds are provided on a reimbursement basis. The grantees must submit clear copies of invoices and proof of payments in order to receive the reimbursement from the state. The county would be fiscal agent and would be responsible for fronting the funding for the original purchases, but would receive the reimbursement monies. In order for the grain milling and cider making equipment to be used, they need dedicated space, which does not exist currently. These facilities will be available for use as shared infrastructure for small farmers participating in the Saving Seconds program. With respect to the River Greenway infrastructure, the projected opening of the River Greenway is with respect to the River Greenway Infrastructure 5 provides a tremendous opportunity for the Agua Fria Village and Reunity to attract visitors and provide a refreshing and educational destination. The Reunity and Agua Fria Village Association received a grant from Main Street, New Mexico to create a feasibility study for the proposed Agua Fria Cultural Center that is envisioned to also be located at Reunity Resources and include a year-round cafe, farm stand, industrial kitchen for use by small farmers and restaurateurs, and multi-purpose event space used for performances, exhibitions, and educational activities. It would also contain a historical resource room and exhibit space focusing on Agua Fria Aguafia's history as an indigenous and Hispanic agricultural center, and as a home for many renowned artists, past and present. The state LIDA statute allows for the use of public funds in support of economic development projects with qualified entities that provide a demonstrated public benefit, codified and securitized through a project participation agreement. County LIDA Ordinance 2014-7 confirms and comports with the state LIDA statute. LIDA is relevant to the proposed creative industries project because it would allow capital purchase with grant funding to be legally owned by a Reunity. That is material because the county staff does not support a structure whereby the county would own structures on land that it does not own. Nor would the county staff support this project of county project managers, since it would be jumping to the head of the line of other projects due to the tight expenditure window. If the county manager is authorized to move forward, we will need to confirm through the application process that the Economic Development Organization of New Mexico is okay with using LIDA to transfer assets acquired with grant funds to Reunity. Reunity Resources is a 501c3 organization and operates in the target industries of agriculture, arts and culture, and ecotourism, and also outdoor recreation, as identified in the 2015 Santa Fe County Sustainable Growth Management Plan and the LIDA Ordinance 2014-7. As such, Reunity Resources is a qualified entity as defined under state and local LIDA ordinance. The Economic Development Division respectfully requests that the county manager is authorized to coordinate the development and submittal of a grant application to the New Mexico Economic Development Department's Creative Industries Program, together with Reunity Resources, for a project that will build 2 modular prefab buildings and expands on 2 initiatives, Saving Seconds and the proposed cultural center along the Santa Fe River Greenway. And as I mentioned, Santa Fe County would serve as the fiscal agent for the grant. Additionally, if the grant is awarded, staff proposes that a local Economic Development Act project participation agreement with Reunity Resources be developed to properly and legally transfer any property purchased or acquired to Reunity, as LIDA is often the most appropriate vehicle through which government supports private economic development activities. In addition, the option of owning structures on private land is not attractive for a variety of reasons, such that county staff would not support accepting the grant if LIDA proves not to be a viable option. The PPA would outline the specific and quantifiable public benefits and performance timeframe that Reunity will commit to in consideration of this funding. The PPA would have to be approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you, Juan, very much for that detailed explanation and for working on this in such a short time frame. As many of you might know, this was not on the agenda originally on the days the 14th when our regular scheduled meeting was going to happen. So because of the snafu, we were able to get this on the agenda because the deadline is September 21st. So sometimes things work to one's benefit. Is there any questions from the board? Okay, do we first want to go to Juliana? Do you want to say anything? Or do you, I'll go to the commissioners and then I'll let Juliana speak. So Commissioner Green?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Juan, and thank you, Reunity. Love the organization, love the location, so I'm going to be in support of this. 2 things. One, in the past, I've noticed that I think LIDA has to be tied to a job creation factor. Is there a corresponding job creation aspect to this?
Yes. So, Commissioner Green, commissioners, I have spoken with Reunity Farms, and they are confident that they can produce 2 full-time employee equivalents in the period of time within which they would perform. That would all be negotiated. And I'll let Juliana speak specifically, but my understanding is that they currently have 36 full-time equivalents, which breaks down into some number of about 8 full-time actual employees, and then the balance being seasonal employees. So using that model, we would develop a PPA that would tie to 2 additional full-time equivalents during the performance period.
Great, thank you. And just as a little bit of housekeeping, the memo is on outdated letterhead. So it's, but in the
Duly
rest-
noted and will be corrected, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hughes.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say I think this is a great idea, and every time I think of Reunity Resources, I think of the fact that Santa Fe used to have lots and lots of little farms, and over the years, since way before any of us were born, they've decided to grow houses instead of farms, and most of our food is grown elsewhere now. And I think Reunity Resources, if I'm not mistaken, is probably the only farm upstream of the sewage treatment plant that still exists in Santa Fe. So, people have gardens and such, but, an actual operating farm. So I think we should support this effort, and in the future, I hope we'll have more opportunities to support local agriculture.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Anyone else?
I don't have anything, Madam Chair. I think it's a great idea.
Juliana, please come forward.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for your support. My name is Juliana Ciano, and I'm the Program Director at Reunity Resources. I'll be brief because it sounds like we already have your support, and I know you have a lot to do, but I just want to reiterate that this growing our creative industries through the culinary arts and growing our local agriculture, this is all based on an identified community need by the Santa Fe Food Policy Council, that these types of shared infrastructure, having a mid-sized mill that multiple farmers can use, allows more people to grow grain. If you're between a home garden and a 2,000 acre scale wheat farm, there's no place for you to go. So for us to be able to be that shared infrastructure hub, as we've begun with this other equipment, not only creates jobs directly, but supports the ag industry in New Mexico as a whole. This is also shovel-ready, as Juan mentioned. We have a certified kitchen. We have equipment we've been starting. This is kale. We call them finca chips. Chef Mariela on the farm created these with farm kale and collards. We work with about 15 other farmers and small food businesses in our farm stand. We have, kimchi and tea, and here's one local grain grower who's grinding it by hand on her countertop and so excited about us getting a slightly larger mill, and that the amount of food waste generally lost between the field and the fork is about 40%. And that lots of things, we grow a lot of beautiful food on the farm, but we also end up, for every bunch of beautiful carrots, we harvest a whole bunch of random little radishes, random little carrots, and it's like, well, what can you do? Energy, water, human labor, love, all went into that. It's very nutritious. Well, you can make carrot hummus, right? You can produce all of these other things that still go to improve our local food security, create jobs, and build a vibrant creative industry. And to Juan's last point here, we have a track record successfully of creating jobs. We were founded in 2011 as volunteers while we were teaching at local schools, and now we are currently employing 36 people. So thank you for considering submitting this on our behalf, for all your efforts. We really appreciate it. And I'm here, and come see us. If you've never been down, I have little postcards to help you find us. Come see us. It's harvest season.
Just hold on. I think Commissioner Bustamante has something she would like to say.
I do, and thank you for the presentation and showing your products. The thing that I want to make sure to acknowledge of what you're doing and the importance to where we are and why we never had a soup line during the Great Depression in northern New Mexico is because we managed to continue to grow food when other places had run out or couldn't grow it because of drought, etc. And we've been blessed enough in northern New Mexico, though I've said this to elder family members, and they said, yes, but we were very poor. And I said, but were you ever hungry? And did you have diverse food in front of you. It wasn't just a monocrop structure that most farming across the country does. For those reasons, what you're doing is incredibly precious. It's a diversity of food, making sure that local food is still tangible to people and showing people how to grow that food. So it's a precious commodity, for lack of a better word, but just your effort is so valued, so important for those people who talk about holding on to their traditions and being the last farmers. Reunity is one of those that continues to maintain and assure that these practices will be kept alive, because it would be an absolute unethical move on anyone's part to not be able to assure that that future generations wouldn't have access to locally grown food. And that's going to be a long haul. So grateful for the good work that you're doing. Thank you sincerely.
Thank you very much.
I can't tell you how honored I am to have Reunity Resource in my district and to see all the good work you have been doing. It warms my heart. Thank you. And with that, can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton. I have a second from Commissioner Hughes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, yay, onward. Sometimes mistakes work in our favor, or things that happen that we can become frustrated by technology, but actually in this time it worked in all of our favor. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Nancy, Laura, and Phoebe also for being here and supporting this important project. We're all very grateful, and thank you, Juan, for your hard work in such a short amount of time. So we've said all those in favor, yes? Okay, we're done. We get to move on. Okay, yay, thank you very much. And next I will go on to presentations, which is, the first one is presentation on USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service Emergency Watershed Protection Program. Aaron Reynolds, packet material added. So welcome.
Alrighty, good afternoon, Commissioners. I appreciate this opportunity to present in front of everyone. And just as an introduction, my name is Aaron Reynolds, and I am the EWP, or the Emergency Watershed Protection Program Manager. And I'm going to give you a brief rundown of what this program is, how it functions, and some of the work that we've been doing in the Rio and Medio area. So I work for the NRCS, which is an agency within the Department of Agriculture. And the main goal of our program is to protect resource concerns and prevent future damage of those concerns. And even though the EWP program isn't one of our flagship programs, it does serve a very important purpose in the community for protecting human life and property. So what you're going to hear me talk about is three main points of how to qualify for the EWP program. One, the disaster has to be caused by a natural event. Two, there has to be a threat to human life and property. And then the final one is there has to be an imminent threat, so that the concern has to exist. If nothing exists, then it wouldn't qualify. And again, I'll go through all this as I go through the presentation. So as I mentioned, we've been doing work in the Rio and Medio area. Martin Vigil reached out to us about some flooding that was occurring after a fire from years past, and some of the damages that have continuously been occurring after the snow melt, and the threats people have seen. So as you can see on some of these photos, when we went out and did an inventory of all the properties, there was excess debris that has started piling up that could pose a risk to causing log jams and backs up water, which could threaten homes and lives. and those being there are just a threat to everyone. And also, we were looking at soil erosion that was happening. And as you can see in these photos, as the water rose up, it started cutting around some of the infrastructure in the area and started posing a risk to the bridge, if not homes that are in the area. So the goal of this program would be to go in and devise a structure that would prevent future damages from occurring in these places. So just to start out kind of how this EWP process works is, as I mentioned, Martin Vigil reached out to us and requested our assistance. So when we get that request for assistance, it initiates NRCS, which then sends out engineers and other planners to do a detailed inventory of all the properties and come up with a cost estimation of what it would take to fix those concerns. And all the details that I'm talking about go into what we call the damage survey report, which simply enough is a who, what, when, where, and why of what's needed to fix these concerns in these locations. So when we receive that request, we have up to 60 days to complete that damage survey report because this is an emergency program. So we want to respond as fast as possible. Obviously, when we found out about this concern, there was snow on the ground in that area, so we weren't capable to get to the Rio and Medio area immediately after. So that damage survey report is completed. I will review the findings with you all towards the end of my presentation. And once that occurs, our national office will then let us know if we are approved for funding, because it's not necessarily a guarantee that we will receive funding. So it's a first come, first served basis. So as everyone knows, there's disasters happening all over this country right now with the changing climate. So the sooner we can get this approved, the sooner and more likely we are to receive the funding for this project. And on my next slide, I will talk about the details of how that funding process works, just so everyone's aware. Or actually, first, before that, jumped ahead. For this program to happen, it's not like our normal programs where we work directly with a landowner. In order for this program to function, we need what is called a sponsor. And simply enough, a sponsor is a governing body with jurisdiction in the area. So examples of them are like, a county or soil and water conservation districts have specific jurisdictions in the area. So when Martin reached out to us with that letter, he agreed that the county could possibly serve as a sponsor. Through that letter, there wasn't any obligation. It was just a letter of interest that would initiate us and get us out there, as I said. And to go through some of the responsibilities of what would be expected from the sponsor. So the sponsor would enter into an agreement with NRCS. So this is a partnership between the federal government and whoever decides to be the sponsor. So that sponsor then is supposed to come up with 25% of the total cost to mediate these concerns. And then NRCS will come in and cover 75% of the rest of the cost of those specific damages. And NRCS will also function as the technical step for this, as we will be the ones that will send out our engineers. We will do all the design work, and we will help oversee the construction of these projects to make sure they're done to our specific standards and specs. So that's not something we would expect of you, but that 25%, as I'll get into in my next slide, can either be through direct cash or through in-kind services, which could be labor, equipment, things of that nature. So there is flexibility if the county is capable of providing any of that support to some of these landowners. Next, they have to come up with the control of land in the area. This is not something an NRCS would do. So the sponsor would need to verify that the people where we're doing the work is controlled by the person you're working with. Because what other sponsors do is they will then enter into an agreement with each one of these individual landowners of how this project will be carried out. So that's very much encouraged when that happens. The sponsor is also required to come up with the regulatory permits. Now, obviously, since the Rio and Medio is a waterway, we do have to get an Army Corps of Engineer permit, but NRCS can help the sponsor come up with that permit and then transfer that to the county, because it's a little easier for a federal agency to get that permit and pass it on through a nationwide permit. And then the other one that is kind of a big deal is the sponsor is also required to maintain operation and maintenance for whatever is installed. So if there's specific maintenance of clean out or debris removal in front of some of these structures, it ultimately does fall to the sponsor to carry out that operation and maintenance. Now, that doesn't mean the sponsor couldn't pass that requirement onto the landowners. That's definitely within the sponsor's ability to do. And then the last one was just that provide proof that there are insufficient resources to carry out the work. So as I mentioned, when it comes to that the cost share on this project is NRCS will pay for 75% of the cost to complete the work. So simply enough, if a $100,000 invoice was submitted to NRCS, NRCS will pay 75% of that. We will not pay any more of that dollar amount. So it's very simple. You know, if you lump all this together, we will pay 75% of that total cost. And then it is on the sponsor to come up with that 25%. We will not be there to hound you and make sure you're utilizing that 25% correctly. That's ultimately for the sponsor's records of how they come up with that. And then, as I mentioned, if you're not going to utilize cash, there is the ability to use that in-kind services, which can count as employee hours, equipment hours, and things of that nature to complete the work. So if the sponsor is capable of carrying out the work on their own, they can follow suit and do that. It all depends on what the county's ability is. Obviously, everyone's extremely busy right now, so that's not expected, but it is definitely an opportunity for a way to avoid a direct cash match. And if there are ever any questions on what would qualify as an in-kind service, just reach out to us and we can help you with that determination. So in talking about how the funding for EWP works is there's two different forms of funding that happen. There are the financial assistance, which are the construction costs, which is in this case going to be around $300,000, which I'll go through kind of that a bit more detailed. But there also is the ability to add technical assistance funds to the sponsor. So NRCS would provide 100% cost share for the county to hire someone to manage this project. So if they had to go in and hire someone to verify control of land, complete payments, make sure permits are being followed, NRCS can add those dollars to the contract, and there is no cost share requirement specifically on that. So that's just, you know, we take hours from our staff or our engineers would use and give that to the sponsor to use. And that's something we can definitely discuss, and we have discussed with possibly utilizing some help from the Santa Fe Soil and Water Conservation District in that assistance. So just that's an important thing to keep in mind is that there's both FA funds and TA funds for this project. The TA funds aren't required to move forward if the sponsors feel they have the workers to get the project completed. So as I mentioned, with EWP, there's the three different requirements of what a watershed emergency looks like. As I mentioned, it has to be a natural event. So obviously we know we had flooding that occurred from the snow melt from the fires that have occurred. And, you know, from that fire that occurred, water wasn't able to properly infiltrate into the ground. So you had an increased water flow on the surface that then caused more damage in the drainage in Rio and Medio. And that created the watershed impairment, which is the debris that has started clogging up the river, blocking the river, diverting it, and also some of the soil erosions that has been occurring that threatens both roads, homes, and other infrastructure in the area. So we obviously are meeting these three requirements to be eligible for EWP, so this is definitely a good project. So as I mentioned, the goal of EWP is to protect human life and property. So instead of us going out there saying, we're gonna fix this one concern, we have to identify threats to homes, roads, dams, and other infrastructure in the area. And when I use the term infrastructure, I use that very loosely. That could be water lines, that could be roads, bridges. There is kind of a gamut of where this protection can occur. So that's ultimately what we were identifying when we were out there. Now, quickly, where we can't use the program is it can't be used strictly to protect standing timber, orchards, or agronomic crops. There are other USDA programs intended to protect agricultural property, and that goes through our sister agency, the Farm Service Agency, and I'm not going to talk about their program because ultimately they're the ones that have that jurisdiction over it. So for this EWP to happen, there has to have been some type of local emergency. And we don't necessarily need a federal declaration or a state declaration. Our state conservationist based out of Albuquerque can initiate a local watershed emergency, and that's what happened. So when Martin submitted the letter of assistance to us, our state conservationist approved that, yes, an emergency happened here, and this may move forward. So this is ultimately the first step, is our state conservationist approving this measure. And as I mentioned, you know, the request for assistance letter was sent to us. We do use a template, and we did share that. So if there ever is another event that does occur in the area, you can just let us know, and we can share this template letter with you. And it's just a pretty simple fill in the blank of what happened and when it happened. And then obviously, when we get that letter, we are required within 60 days to get out there and do our assessments. And as I mentioned with the assessment, which we call our damage survey report, which is the details of what damages occurred and where they occurred. So we utilize GPS data to figure out where all these concerns existed, and then we came up with cost estimations for what it would take to mediate some of these concerns. So, you know, the first thing is we're always looking for, is this eligible? Did the impairment happen? And are there any limitations? And then we utilize our engineers to identify what are some of the best practices to mediate these concerns and prevent that threat to human life and property. Because ultimately, the intention of this program is for the protection of human life and property. We understand that there are some importance of hydrologic capacity and other restoration measures, but ultimately, the purpose and how this is written is we are protecting human life and property. There are some other programs that landowners could utilize if they're interested in restoration, but for this program, the sole purpose is for protecting human life and property. And then with all that data, we did work with some of our local field reps and came up with cost estimations locally for what it would take to fix most of these concerns here. And I'll review that with everyone here and kind of show a spreadsheet for how that comes out. But those are based on local quantities that are unique to Santa Fe, because depending on where you're at, the cost changes tremendously. So it's really important that we identify what it costs in your area specifically to do this work. So some of the limitations of where this program can't do work, it's just important to understand this. And, you know, we've talked to Martin, we've talked with some of the landowners of what we're capable of doing. One, we can't provide recovery assistance on a site for more than twice in a 10-year period. Obviously, that doesn't apply here because this is the first time this has been rolled out in the Rio and Medio area. We can't use EWP funds if the concern was created due to a lack of maintenance. So if we knew that landowners were throwing trees in the river and backing up the river on their own, that would be an example of something we couldn't do. Again, the threat has to be created by a natural event that happened. Next, and this is the big one, and we get this question a lot, is NRCS cannot go in and rebuild new roads. Now, that doesn't mean we can't work around roads. We can protect roads so that further damage doesn't occur, but if a road was washed out, we do not have the capabilities to go back in and rebuild the roads for people to get back to their homes. You know, as I mentioned earlier, this isn't a program for agricultural purposes, so we're not going to be doing management practices or other concerns threatening agriculture. This is, again, a threat to human life and property. And I know I'm kind of beating the drum on that one, but it's really important to know the limitations of this program and what we're capable of doing. So when we start talking about what practice was needed to treat that concern, our main focus is putting in the most cost-effective practice that will treat the concern and reduce that risk to human life and property. So we're trying to reduce the soil erosion. We're trying to restore that hydrologic capacity of the river back to where it was prior to the event. We're not going to go above and beyond of where it was. We're just going to put it back to where it was, and so that threat no longer exists in the area. And then those practices specifically have to be economical and environmentally defensible with technical soundness. So we're open to communicating with the landowners to come up with a solution of what they want and what we think would fix their concerns. But ultimately, in the end, it is important that we are following a technical soundness and that we are, in fact, fully treating that concern so that there isn't future damages to human life or property in the area. So with that, when it comes to how long it takes for this work to get completed, once funds have been allocated to the state, and funds can get allocated once I submit the damage survey report. So the damage survey report, as I mentioned, is complete. All we have to do is submit the proposal. If funds are available, National will send us a funds allocation. And from the time we get that letter and talk with the sponsor, we have 220 days to get the work completed. Because again, this is an emergency program. We want to get moving as soon as possible. And when it comes to how we would pay these projects, once the work is completed, NRCS signs off that this does meet our standards and specifications, we can initiate a payment as soon as possible. So when we initiate that payment, it usually takes less than 2 weeks. So it is a very fast turnaround if everything is running as it should be. So funds can be flowing into this project pretty fast as we move forward. And I personally like to build these that there's always cash flow into the contractors, because the contractors are taking on a lot of responsibility when they're doing the work on these projects. And getting that cash flow does keep them running, does keep their employees fed and functioning. So this is a very fast turnaround. Now, in the event there is climatic weather where we can't do the work, there is the ability to extend this agreement beyond the 220 days of when we receive that allocation. So there is flexibility in getting the work done, because obviously we can't control the weather, and then obviously with winter coming forward, we're not going to be able to do a lot of work in the winter due to the snow. So if that occurs, we can extend the agreement for a longer period of time. And again, at this point in time, there is no agreement signed. There is no obligation. There's nothing. Once we get those funds in state, we will then write an agreement that we will present to the commissioners to formally sign. And that will detail how this project will work and what duties will be carried out by both parties. And again, that will be something you all can review, your attorney could review, but at this point in time, there is no obligation and there is no fiscal responsibility for this work. So as I mentioned, the steps for how this program works is we have informal discussions. We met out in the field with landowners, with Martin Vigil, and toured some of the sites. We received that request. We completed the damage survey report within 60 days of that request. And then once we get the approval after this meeting, or if we get the approval, we will submit that for funding request. And as I mentioned, now that I talked about kind of the details of the very brief details of the program, I wanted to review specifically some of the details of what our engineers and planners came up with. So the majority of the concern that existed in the Rio and Medio was sediment and woody debris. So as I mentioned, when that stuff is in the middle of the river, it changes the flow of the water, and some of those flows could possibly threaten some of the homes and infrastructure that are in the area. So the woody debris and sediment removal are the two big ones, and I'll get into the cost of these on the next slide. But the other practices you see, the HESCO barriers, diversions, gabions, revetment fence, rock riprap, the intention of those practices is to stabilize the stream bank so that future erosion doesn't occur. Because when you look at the erosion that's occurring in the Rio and Medio, it's starting to pose a threat to bridges, to roads, and to homes. So those practices that we do have very specific points on of where they're occurring are meant to stabilize the stream bank and prevent future damages from occurring. So as I mentioned, this is kind of a breakdown of the cost on the Rio and Medio project. So the majority of our cost, so we're estimating that this project will cost about $350,000. You obviously see the 2 rows of exactly what it cost, but we do like to account for inflation on some of these costs, so we do like to bump that amount up a little bit. So the total cost of this project we project to be $350,000. So as I mentioned, this is a 75-25% cost share between the two agencies, and NRCS would cover roughly $262,000, and then the sponsor would be needing to come up with almost $88,000 for this project. Now, these are just estimations for the work that needs to get completed. In the event that it's more, it's less, it will adjust. So if we find out that this actually comes in to be a lot less, the sponsor will only be on the hook for the 25% of what it actually cost. So there is some flexibility. And if there's a scenario where additional projects need to be added, where other damages happened and no one knew about them, we can request additional dollars for this. So this number is flexible of how it could move, and it all depends on how the sponsor would want to move forward. The sponsor isn't required to add additional dollars, but it is an option if the sponsor would be interested in doing so. So in conclusion, as I mentioned, we have maps, we have GPS data for where all this is located. We've been through this process to complete the damage survey report, and now we're entering this 3rd column of the formal agreement. And that would be the next step after we submit this proposal to our national office. And if they approve, as I said, we will then start looking at writing the agreement, and then once that agreement is written, our engineers will start collecting survey data and coming up with designs that we will review with both the sponsor and with the landowners to make sure everyone's content with the work that's planned. And then that's all I had, and I appreciate the time, and if any of the commissioners had any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, Aaron, very much. I think this is only a presentation, so there's no actual vote here today. And we appreciate the presentation. I see that Commissioner Green has a question. Anyone else?
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for coming out and spending the time with us. Thank you, ACV Hill. This has been great. You were proactive in stepping up for the Rio and Medio area, and I'm sure the whole community appreciates it, and this is great. The first, I think one of the novel things of this is that this program allows us to get money funneled through us, and allows us to work on private property without running up against the anti-donation clause. So we wouldn't have been able to do this ourselves, right? And so this is a federal pass-through that this allows us to get around some of the stickier points of the New Mexico Constitution. The other thing that I think that we were discussing that was really promising was the fact that there were some creative ways to do the in-kind match, and instead of actually having to do a lot of cash out of pocket, that there's a lot of services that we can provide either through services or adaptive reuse of some of the material. So like a lot of the soils that are going to be pulled off of land that have washed down to the bottom of this project area can actually be trucked, instead of being trucked off-site and taken somewhere to a landfill, could actually be brought to the top of the site where they actually started from. So there's going to be a little bit of reuse, and we can actually take that on, and that's a way of using some of those funds, and that's great. Lastly, one of the things that is a concern, and that but Aaron alluded to it, and we've sort of discussed this, is the fact that this is sort of like a channeling exercise, right? So this design is not going to be a way to slow down water, which is usually a best practice for us in these river valleys, is to slow it down and let it percolate and not just go straight down the valley. But the engineering is pretty much made to get it off-site and down the valley as fast as possible. So there's probably going to be need to be a secondary program, which isn't Aaron's program, but is another USDA program that we may apply to then come in, once everything is cleaned up and channeled, to come in and have a second sort of layer of design that might slow down the water in this valley so that some of it doesn't just end up in Nambe Pueblo and down below this, and maybe it's captured on site there. But I thank you for being proactive, both of you all, and for the community stepping up, and I hope everybody works well with you and we can get this done soon. Thank you.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in because Commissioner Green made two very, very important points. And first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. And what I really appreciated about the presentation was how distinctly you made the points about the various responsibilities and what the program could do and what it couldn't do and whatever. It's just so helpful to have that clear up front. It's really wonderful to have an opportunity, as Commissioner Green said, to bring extra money in for something that needs to be done, to get support for that, you know, even if we have to participate. And I think it was really great that Assistant Chief Feehill thought to reach out to this kind of program, because it's not the sort of thing everybody knows about. And then the other thing I wanted to I thought it was really important to bring up is the idea of the second program, because fixing this from an engineering point of view is a seemingly very needed step. And then the idea of restoration activities that allow water capture and infiltration and slowing down so that mitigate floods in general in the area and have the benefit of keeping water in Santa Fe County that you want to keep in the ground in the county is a great point, and something we should be at the county thinking about really, really seriously in a lot of places. So thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. I see Leandro standing there. That must mean he wants to say something.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes, thank you. I just kind of wanted to first thank Mr. Reynolds, of course, for his presentation today and all of their help. They've been a great partner. I did also want to thank Mr. Cadlasek from the Rio and Medio Mutual Domestic, who actually brought this forward and really encouraged us to take a look at the program. And I definitely want to thank ACV Hill for all the work he did in leading the team. Legal has also been really involved in helping us understand how to maneuver anti-donation. And I also have last week been able to go before the Santa Fe Poake Water Conservation District, who's going to also be a partner most likely with us to be able to really get this moving and accomplished, because there was still some anti-donation concerns with our 25% match portion of it. But possibly partnering with the Conservation District will help us get around that. And I also wanted just to remind the Commission, as you've mentioned, we do own the open space properties at the head of the Rio Medio, so a lot of the efforts that are happening here will just help us with what we're doing and planning for. And as Commissioner Green said, we can do a little different on our open space properties up above to work different ways of conservation and not have it just flow. So that is separate from this project. We got to accomplish this first. But I also wanted to thank the board for authorizing the letter almost a year ago. I think it was September when you guys sent the letter out that got all this started. So at this point, I think Manager Schaefer can take the next step. We wanted to give you the presentation. As you mentioned, there's a lot of responsibilities, and he described them much better than I ever could. So you now know all that we're getting into in terms of our responsibility, but it still seems like a good partnership with our folks in Rio Medio and everybody that's been helping us. So just wanted to step up and say those thank yous to everybody that really helped open our eyes to this program, and I think it may be something we could use again. So you may put me on speed dial and take my call. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leandro. Thank you, Aaron, very much. We look forward to further progress on this. Next, I'm going to go to 7B, presentation and update on the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. Welcome, Eric. Eric Vasquez is the Executive Director of the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area.
Thank you, members of the Commission. My name is Eric Vasquez. I'm the Executive Director of the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. I have stood here before in different roles, but this is my first time representing this organization. It's great to see all of you again. So, I believe, Commissioner, I believe that a presentation was provided to the members of the...
Yes, we have it, and I believe that it'll be up on screen, and you have a...
All right, I now have the controller. All right.
Now it's dangerous.
Now you really will regret this. Okay, so this is just a formal presentation, not intended to be a slide presentation, but we'll make it work that way as well. Just an update and who we are and what we've been up to. I am as of November this last year, I became the Executive Director for the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. And I think I just went the wrong way. This is not me.
Yes, I think that Matt is working on it.
So as I was saying, I became the Executive Director of the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. The Heritage Area, when we get to it, I just want to give you a brief update on that. Many of you, can I just ask you, how many of you know what heritage areas are, or national heritage areas? We've all heard of them, right? Yeah. So there are currently 62 of them nationally. They are all created by Congress. It takes an act of Congress to set them up. The first one was established in 1984, or actually 10 came in that, and then over the years, thank you, we moved to and slowly added more, and they've really started to take off lately. So what they are is they are areas that are placed, created by Congress, and they're administered by local either nonprofits, state government, local government organizations, or something like that will stand up and create an organization to administer these heritage areas, and then they establish goals and objectives within them. For ourselves, we were established specifically to protect and promote and sustain the communities, the heritage, the languages, the cultures, traditions, and our environment of our specific area. We represent 3 counties, Taos, Rio Arriba, and Santa Fe. And so anything that happens within those 3 counties that is cultural or heritage related, we can act on. And that is kind of a broad scope of what we're talking about there. Because culture, heritage, that doesn't exist in a bubble. These are things, are living, vibrant aspects of our communities that have existed for millennia in this region. And so this is something that we are working to keep going and alive. And culture doesn't exist in a, like I said, it's not under glass, it's not a bubble. It's something that's living, thriving. And for something to live and thrive, it needs to be able to continue to grow. And so part of our aspect is supporting all aspects of the culture and supporting economic development that specifically is oriented towards that culture, those heritage, those aspects of our region that are unique to this area of the world. So what we do on the bottom of this page, you can see our vision is community and economic viability rooted in the heritage and environment of northern New Mexico. We serve as proactive advocates for preserving the cultures, the heritage, and natural resources in the northern Rio Grande area. We are working to increase awareness about our heritage area for all residents and visitors, and are working for economic expansion through our heritage to ensure that the culture and heritage we are preserved for the future. So that's our general mission statement, what we do, all right? So, all right, I'm going to go over some of our programs. We have what we've primarily been known for is our grant program. We have a sub-grant program where we take funds that we receive through the National Park Service, and then we roll them out to sub-grants to other local community organizations or nonprofits, local governments who are working on projects that align with our overall mission of heritage, culture, and what we just discussed. Last year, we increased the amount that we could award to $10,000. It previously had been smaller amounts and slowly growing up, and we've doubled it to $10,000 last year. And we were able to issue 14 awards totaling $100,000 last year. And we're doing it again this year. On July 20th this last year, we issued our notice to the public. It went out. And so these are just the dates that if you have any organizations such that you think that would be good partners for us or think that they could benefit from a grant, between now and September, I'm having trouble reading my own, 15th, we are accepting grant applications. We have a grants program manager named Stevie Hill. He will work with the applicants because a lot of these groups are small groups. They don't have necessarily have never even applied for a grant before. We will walk them through the steps. We will get them set up and get the applications in. Between now and then, contact us. Contact Steve, contact me, and we will help them do applications. Then the rest of this is just a timeline. We have to send their applications to the National Park Service to review, then we send it on to our board, who had the final say, and then we issue our award winners. And so it is a great way to get some money into the local communities, so I urge you to do that. The next thing we're doing, this is something new that you may not have heard of before. We have an Indigenous language program. This is in FY 2023 was our first year doing this. We awarded $43,000 to two different tribal entities that are specifically working on preserving or teaching their local language. Ironically, or coincidentally, both of those tribe entities are in Santa Fe County. So even though
Not quite. Santa Clara,
Santa Clara is in Santa Fe.
just a little bit.
Just a little, the part that the school is.
Okay, good.
Okay, San Ildefonso Pueblo had a program they're doing with Indigenous Knowledge Collective, which is a native-run nonprofit organization that seeks to teach the language and traditions of the culture through reteaching arts or the crafts or traditional practices that were done. So it isn't a classroom activity, it's more of a workshop activity, and they are not targeting youth like we usually see these programs do, but they are targeting adults, because a lot of the native schools or the BIA-run schools, they are now having language classes in their communities as well. But when the kids go home, if everyone speaks English, then it doesn't work so well. So they're really trying to get Tewa spoken in the home. And so they're working through this practice there. Santa Clara Pueblo is doing something similar. In 2016, Santa Clara Pueblo actually took over administering their local school. So they renamed it the Capo Community School. It is completely run locally. They have a very successful program where a dual language program where both Tewa and English. And they're taking the grant monies that we're providing to stand up classes for the parents, the grandparents, community members. Also, same goal, have the language spoken in home. So these are two program funding things that we've just recently started. We're intending to do it again this year. We're trying to grow this into a much bigger program where we can actually work to sustain the languages and cultures of our region. Next slide is, this one is relevant to you all because last year I came to the Lodgers Tax Board and asked for some money. And this was to put signs up in the region, just notifying the public that you are now entering a National Heritage Area. So thank you all very much. You allocated up to $5,000. We cashed that in for $4,800. And for these signs are going up right now, actually, out on the rural highways of everyone entering Santa Fe County from outside these three regions. We're also putting them up in Rio Arriba, and Taos is coming along soon after as well. So these signs are going up. Again, thank you for providing those funds. Actually, I want to thank you for also providing funding. You gave us some money for legal and accounting services earlier. Santa Fe County has been a fantastic partner, and want to thank you for that as well, for $10,000 for that. And then let's get to the big one. So these are just some projects we've been working on, and recently what we've been doing is we've been collaborating with the state's Department of Cultural Affairs. How many of you have heard of the Los Luceros property? Most of you have. Excellent. Most people haven't. That's why I had to ask. Los Luceros is a unique property in Rio Arriba County, north of Espanola, just north of Alcalde if you're taking the low road to Taos. It is owned by the state. The state purchased it in 2008. It is around 200 acres. It has historic buildings on it that date back over 300 years, and is basically what you would call there's an old hacienda on it that's over 250 years old. There's an old capilla on there. That's actually owned by the church. There's a variety of different structures and facilities on there. And it's hard to describe unless you visit it, but it is one of the most beautiful treasures in northern New Mexico. And it is it used to be the county seat for Rio Arriba County. The Spanish viceroy used to hold court there. When the U.S. government took over, they actually made that the county seat for a little while, and where they would basically run courts out of that place. It is a unique property, and I highly recommend you all come out there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to insist you all to come out there because we're doing some activities out there. In 2008, the state purchased the property. They put it under the Department of Cultural Affairs. It is a historic property. You can actually go out there and visit it on Wednesdays through Sundays with the state and take tours. What we are doing out there is we are expanding activities to include agricultural programs. Now, I found the Reunity Resources presentation earlier quite interesting because they're actually doing something that we're going to be trying to do out there. It has a lot of historic buildings, but it also has a lot of agricultural land on this property too. It is right up against the river. It is like quite frankly, it looks a little bit like a plantation in the south, except northern New Mexico style, built up right along the river with a lot of agricultural land, acequias running through it. And so we're going to take advantage of that. We're working with the DCA right now to parcel out chunks of these lands for community farms. We want to create a way where our organization is going to be leasing the land and then subleasing it out to local farmers or people who want to become farmers. Then we're going to be working with Northern New Mexico College to actually create some education programs where they can come out there at people who are renting the plots. They will have educational assistance to learn how to actually grow organically produced crops using traditional methods, growing traditional crops right here. And all those crops are doing very similar to what Reunity Resources is doing, increasing our food security in northern New Mexico and increasing the economic vitality of that region by allowing us to start to reuse this land that often has been underused for decades now. And so that's one aspect we're doing there. We're also working on taking the next step. You grow the crops, then what do you do with it? Another aspect out there that the state put in when they purchased the property, they put in a commercial kitchen. A commercial kitchen that no one uses and has lost its certification. So within our office, we have a staff member who actually used to run a commercial kitchen. So we are actually in the process right now of recertifying that kitchen, getting it all up and running to actually be a facility where people in the area can go and use it for producing their product that they can then take to market. Or we are also going to be doing pop-up restaurants out there because once you visit this place, you will understand this is an incredible venue, and certain times of the year, our events happen out there, and we want to have a way to serve food to these people who are coming out to this rural spot. We are also working with the ProStart program, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with. It is a restaurant service worker training program to teach, basically, to be able to work in a kitchen in a restaurant. So we're going to be standing up a ProStart program out there to train individuals on kitchen work. We already have one restaurant owner, or an individual who owns 2 restaurants, who's committed to help us with the program, working with the New Mexico Restaurant Association to get it started up, and committed to hiring anyone we take out of there if they need a job. So That's something that we're going to be working on this year, right, as well. But the site itself, I mean, it is an artist haven. It is an amazing space. Again, I highly recommend you all come out there and visit it. As a matter of fact, I am personally inviting you to visit between September 22nd and September 24th. On those dates, we are holding what we are calling our first annual Cultures and Creators Festival, which is an artist festival on the site of the property. We are inviting specific artists to a curated show, and then we are also having other artists there demonstrating traditional art practices that will be happening during those days. It also coincides, it lines up with the property's Harvest Festival. So if any of you have ever been out there for the Apple Harvest Festival, we'll be doing that at the same time as well. So this is a great time to come out and see them. And on the 22nd, which is Friday, we will have an opening reception that evening. Consider yourselves all formally invited to that reception. Also out on that property and throughout our 3 counties, we are starting an artist demonstration workshop where we are basically working with local renowned artists to come out and demonstrate the creative process as well. And we will be doing that in all 3 counties, but starting out in Los Luceros. We have the first project we're doing out there is a weaving workshop, which we are planning to do a week-long weaving workshop with a traditional artist on learning traditional weaving methods out there at Los Luceros. And our plan is for October, early November. I learned yesterday that we may have a problem with the looms that we are planning on using, but we're working on it. An eventual goal, we'd like to start up artist residency. In the photo there, that is Joseph Ascension Lopez working at the River House at Los Luceros. He is our artist in residence. He works for us full-time and working on promoting these artist projects, plus some amazing art. Next project we're doing out there, so this, if you don't know about Los Luceros, if you haven't heard about Los Luceros, maybe this will ring a bell. In 2008, the state purchased the property. Governor Richardson was the governor at that time, and he purchased it in large part because they had an idea for creating a film and media center for northern New Mexico. That project was stood up. They put a lot of infrastructure into the property, but governors change, admissions change, and the next administration chose to halt that effort. So we are restarting it. We are now working directly with the organization, the nonprofit, the Milagro Group, which was stood up at that time to try this. We brought the band back together. We've been meeting out at Los Luceros, and we're starting out activities there again. As a matter of fact, our first one was last week, where we had a dry run for a screenplay writers workshop out there. So we're bringing that back to life. And while we're doing this, our organization has been kind of quiet and under the radar for several years, and we've decided that we're really trying to expand our mission, so we want to get the word out. So we contracted with a local media provider to try to start to push that out. We're also going national, and we're contracting with an individual who basically places stories with national media sources, and we're pushing that as well. So if that works out, I think you're probably going to see some stories about us or some of the projects we're working on very, very soon. And something I'm willing to bet that you have seen before is this magazine, Land, Water, People, Time. This is published annually, and the 8th annual edition will be out at the end of this month. I'm not showing you the cover because our partners on that, the Taos News, would kill me if I showed you what the new cover is going to look like. But yes, it's coming out very soon, and so keep your eyes on that. And wherever I go, I have to call it out. We're doing a lot of good work now. I mean, our organization is really starting to hum and do a lot of great stuff, but it is only because of the people that our board has allowed to come to work for us. So kudos to these individuals. They are rock stars. They are honest to goodness rock stars. and our board. This is an organization that is made up of the representatives, community members, and elected representatives from these 3 counties. We have 3 municipalities. We have 3 counties, all of them with elected members who are appointed by their local governments to serve on our board. And I cannot tell you how important it is and how helpful it is to have those individuals on there to bring the support of their communities to this organization, and then to be working hand in hand with local community members who are appointed by the board just to represent that aspect of it together. And it is a unique way to have local governments collaborating together on a heritage and cultural project that impacts the entire state. So thank you, Santa Fe County. I would love to answer any questions you might have.
So I'll just take a few minutes. Most of the people on this board have heard me praise and explain how challenging this board has been 6 years ago and where we are today, and how hard I have worked with my other board members to make this board successful. I wanted Eric Vasquez as the executive director, and I went after him, and that was something I learned from our former manager, Miss Miller. She taught me that, you know, if you want something, you go after it. I wanted Eric as executive director. I got him on the board for a year, and then I got him as executive director, and I knew it was completely the right thing, because at the first board meeting when he was the executive director, he said, "I'm having so much fun."
Well, I will tell you, yes, Commissioner Hanson is correct. She asked me about, I think it was 4 years ago, to take the position, but I said no. And it is one of the most enjoyable positions I've ever had. I am actually having a lot of fun out there. So.
And on another note, I want to mention that also when I saw Catherine Miller at our dear friend Eric Witt's memorial, I told her what we were doing at Los Luceros, and she said, "That's exactly what we wanted to have happen from the Richards administration," and she was really happy to hear that the film industry, or the film
At Milagro, that
Milagro group was,
and they're still doing it, and so we're helping them. We're kickstarting it, but our job is to help facilitate other groups to come out and do the good work.
And they've also all heard about how we got our reauthorization and how hard that was. And I want you all to know that this sign up at the top on page, page 3 of our presentation, this is a new sign that was just created where that says National Park Service, a member of the National Heritage Area System. That did not exist before this year. It was created since we got reauthorization, and this is something that we are allowed to use on all of our promotional work, that we are part of the National Park Service.
And Commissioner Hanson, if I could just speak to that. So we were originally authorized in, I believe it was 2006. It took multiple years to actually get organized as an organization after that, and then every few years reauthorization was becoming necessary. And every other heritage area out there in the country was doing the same thing, except on their timeline. And it was just a confusing, hot mess. And so finally, this last year, Congress, full credit to our congressional delegation, and Senator Heinrich was a key instrumental part of that, and Senator Lujan as well, in getting all of the heritage areas on one calendar, reauthorized, and they reauthorized us for 15 years. And something like that, basically, it's like it pulls the knife away from your throat. It allows you to stop focusing on survival and start focusing on work. And so I think that's one of the reasons you're going to start to see heritage areas around the country becoming a lot more active. You're going to see us become a lot more active simply because we can now focus on doing great things. And so again, thank you to Santa Fe County. Thank you to Commissioner Hanson for being our top cheerleader in getting that done.
And so with that, are there other comments, questions? Commissioner Bustamante?
Thank you, and thank you for your good work. And thank you for making sure this guy was the one who became the next director. I, too, was the president of the board. It was difficult to say it gently. It was, and the fact was, when I started with the group, we hadn't had our first authorization. I have to give a shout out to someone named Josevilla, and the others who really worked hard, but he has since passed, who were so vigilant in making sure that it got heard in front of Congress just to even have it happen. You have done something and taken it to another level. The evolution was painful. It's growing pains is maybe it was more like growing. This is really beautiful, and I'm excited to see it. And then one thing I just kind of want to leave with you is, when I was doing my first master's degree, there was a woman, Maria Chabot, who I ended up doing the video for Los Luceros. She was Mary Wheelwright, Mary Cabot Wheelwright. The Cabots do not know that they were actually Chabot, but they did change their name, and that's okay. But Maria told me, and I just want to say this out loud in the interest of next time you're there, that when the water would flood on the Horseshoe Bend, the water would run right through the entrada there, the two big doors that you can open on each side.
The hacienda?
Of the hacienda. So they would have to open the doors in the front and the back, and the water literally from the Rio Grande would float right through the house. So thank you for your good work. Thank you for making use of Los Luceros. It was a dream back then. There's a whole other story, but I'd have to start drinking again. I don't want to do that. It was a nightmare. Northern New Mexico College was established, preparing. I worked on the EA for the environmental science program to be at Los Luceros, and it was like a vulture picked it up and took it, and it went to the film folks. Thank you, Governor Richardson. But you're making it happen now, and I'm so grateful, and it's exciting. So
Commissioner
thank you very much.
Bustamante, thank you. I think our board is in a much better place today than it has been in some times in the past. I will also just say that I want to give full credit where it's due for Los Luceros. We have on our board the Secretary of Cultural Affairs, who we worked with. Once she came on board, we immediately started talking about Los Luceros. She brought an MOU to us, and we've been running with it since then.
One word, smart. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my wife and I tried to go to the Apple Festival. What are the dates again this year?
This year will be September 24th is the Apple Festival, or the Harvest Festival, but the whole art show is running the evening of the 22nd is our welcoming reception. You're all invited. And then the 23rd and 24th will also be the art show.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear that the whole organization is doing so well. And Eric, it's always nice to see you. And the only problem with the Apple Festival is that I always bring home way too many apples. And then my wife and I are like running up and down the road trying to give them away to our neighbors. And I'll probably, if I go this year, I'll bring a bunch into the county.
And there will be an apple press there as well. You can press them straight into a cider if you like.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good. That'll be fun. It's always been fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Eric. Thanks for the presentation. That was beautiful to see where this has gone. I have two questions. One, have you looked at, Los Luceros is beautiful. It's an amazing spot. Have you looked at turning it into a wedding venue?
I'm sorry, what venue?
A wedding venue.
Commissioner Green, it currently is used as a wedding venue by some people as well. It's used for high school graduations, wedding venues, but one of the issues we have is not many people know about it. Even though it's a state-run property, if you go there most days, the staff will say that we got maybe 5 visitors. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That may actually be, Santa Fe County has a pretty good marketing and tourism department, but might say that Rio Arriba might not be as strong. And so there may be something that your organization can do to sort of help all of the sort of collective North in its marketing of these underserved and underknown locations.
Exactly what we were thinking when we decided to contract with a PR firm to start to just push our programs.
That's great. Last question. Do you have on your board representation from any of the 8 northern pueblos?
So the 8 northern pueblos and the Jicarilla Apache all have existing positions on our board. We currently don't have a member represented, although Powaka has said that they will be sending a rep. The governor said she would be attending at our next one.
Great, great, thank you.
Yes, I had the honor of meeting with Governor Roybal and personally inviting her, and I will reach out again and remind her as we get close. And we have continually reached out and sent invitations to all of the governors and letting them know that they have a seat on the board and a voting position, and that this was created by Congress and this is a federal organization. So we will continue to reach out, and hopefully we will have more tribal representation. But also showing that we are concerned about their language is, the first step. I feel like we needed to show that we recognize that they are an important part of the culture of northern New Mexico, and to do something for them and not expect them to be there pushing us, but that we make that offer. And then the other thing, the other reason that I asked Eric here is not only because I'm grateful to him, but we all sit on boards. Commissioner Green and I sit on the North Central Economic Development Board, Commissioner Hughes sits on RTD, et cetera, SWAMA, Buckman, Commissioner Hamilton is the chair of Buckman Direct Diversion Board. I think it's important for these boards that we sit on to come and do presentations to this board. And so I wanted to start the ball rolling with a board that, I'm the president of, and could have brought forward and show you the good work that we are doing for Santa Fe County and northern New Mexico. So with that, thank you, Eric, very much for your willingness to be the executive director, and it warms my heart that you're having fun.
And thank you all.
Thank you. So next we will go on to matters of public concern. I believe that we have 3 people online. I don't know if there's anyone in the audience who would yes, will you please come forward? Please make it brief. We'll have, I don't have a timer, but it'll be 3 minutes.
Thanks. Hello, Commissioners. I'm John Kadlicek, the president of the Rio Medio Mutual and Domestic and the Mayordomo of the Rio Medio Ditch Association, and I wanted to thank you for your receptivity in sponsoring the EWP grant. I think it'll do a lot to help us get back on our feet. I also want to express my concern and investment, which I stated a year ago, of the importance of an interagency, holistic overall watershed plan. And in the past year, as I've worked on things, I've become sort of painfully aware of the lack of communication, even within Santa Fe County with the open space and other departments, especially Santa Fe County Open Space and the Forest Service. The Forest Service at this point is sort of moving forward on closing the Rio Medio Trail, which begins on county open space land, and mostly because of neighbor complaints. The trailhead happens to be on my property. I don't like the traffic problem there, but I don't really want the trail closed because there's nothing like it in Santa Fe, especially for families and small children. So there needs to be a creative solution. At this point, the solution the Forest Service is looking at is taking it to Pacheco Canyon. But the bigger issue is just having some sort of interagency planning, because working on the open space, doing the work that Aaron was talking about, it's just not doing the most that can be done in terms of curing what happened with the fire scar, with the burn way up above. And so I just really encourage you all, I don't know to what extent you work with the Forest Service, but without collaboration between all the agencies, nothing's going to happen. And the flood was terrifying. There were 6 of them. You know, come April, May, I was already worrying about it. It didn't happen, but probably will again. Another point, we're lucky to have a new neighbor, a guy named Reed Whittlesey, who works for Rio Grande Return. He's a river restoration ecologist. And I've talked to Aaron about the restoration piece, and as Commissioner Green said, we don't want the water to just go fast. We want things to grow in it, to slow it down, as well as protection for the buildings. And the only bridge in the valley is on my property, which withstood the flood, thanks to my very smart engineering wife, who was told that she was overbuilding it 20 years ago, but it stayed it stayed there. So that's a concern I have is what can be done to have the agencies work together. Reed and I have formed what we're calling the Rio and Medio Watershed Group. He has a lot of contact with the Forest Service. He works closely with Adeline also and has talked to her a lot about what needs to happen in the open space. We have 3 acequias. 2 of them are completely non-functional since the flood. I've talked to Paula Garcia some about what's available to make that work. And that's another concern that we have. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. So thanks again for sponsoring. Appreciate it.
And thank you very much for coming and being here and being concerned with your community and making those comments. I appreciate it very much.
Welcome.
Next, Olivia, I believe that you are the person in charge of whoever's online, so if you could give me the first person.
Yes, Madam Chair. I have Julie Bennett who is signed up.
Okay.
I do not see her online though.
I have Mary Newberg also and John Halek. Do you have any of those people online?
I do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll close matters from public concern, and we'll go on to matters from the county manager. Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'll be exceedingly brief, and in fact, the one thing I wanted to highlight has already been discussed with the change to our Open Meetings Act resolution. We have both addressed the root cause that caused the technical difficulties that led to the cancellation of last week's meeting, but it did also prompt us to be more resilient and to create a system that would allow us to avoid future cancellations, provided our website is working, of course. But that's something, again, we can't eliminate all risk, but I think those steps will certainly help us navigate them in the future. I know the board, shares, my commitment to continuing to allow for a virtual participation option, as I do think it does make our meetings more accessible to the public and provides a more convenient means through which the public can participate in those matters of significance to them. So that's my update. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, we will go to matters from the county commissioners and other elected officials. I'll start with Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will too try to be pretty brief and just put a little thing into everybody's radar, which is we've heard about the Vista del Rio apartments up in Espanola and the collaborative effort to save these apartments in the affordable portfolio of our region. There are 49 units up there, 19 of which are currently inhabited, and the city of Espanola is under contract to purchase the project on September 10th. However, We do not know if Espanola is going to be capable of purchasing it, and while the price is right, the amount of maintenance is pretty extensive, and so we are working on a plan that is a sort of a Plan B and a Plan C that would find an alternative body to do so. And so Plan B has been mentioned as potentially Santa Fe County purchasing it, although I don't think we're ready to do that either. And then Plan C would be putting together a third-party private development partnership. And even if Santa Fe County stepped in, there might be a private partner in the mix. We are reaching out to the USDA to see if we can get buy some time, and to the seller to see if we can buy some time, because he's pretty adamant about selling it on September 10th. And so if Espanola or whoever Plan B or Plan C is cannot execute this, we may lose these apartments, and they would be, the families in there could be evicted. I hope we can find a good solution to this in the next 30 days, or if we can buy some time, maybe in the next 3 to 4 months. Please look for this in the next few weeks, and we hope to have a solution coming soon. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Commissioner Hughes?
There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 3 things I wanted to mention. One is Commissioner Hamilton and I are working on a resolution on the regulation of renewable energy projects. The purpose of the resolution would be to streamline the process, both to make it easier for developers, but also to help us ensure that any projects that developed are safe for the communities nearby. And I think we'll try to bring that forward maybe around the first meeting in September, but I know other commissioners may have things they want to add, and so I just want you all to keep on the lookout so that at the appropriate time, in the public way that we're allowed to do it, you add your things if that's it. The resolution right now, Commissioner Hamilton and I worked on it the way we want it. We're going to send it over to legal and see what happens when we send it over there and get it back. So that's moving along. I'm having a town hall on September 7th about that Assistant Chief Martin Vigil will be the main presenter on evacuation planning for El Dorado. We had a fire at the entrance of Avenida El Dorado a few weeks back that got everybody scared about, what would happen if we couldn't get out on our normal routes. And so Assistant Chief Vigil will help with that. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that we will have a presentation from the Regional Transit District in September, similar to, well, it won't be very similar to the one we just had, but it'll be about buses, but it'll be fun as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Hamilton?
No, thank you, Commissioner Hughes, for mentioning the resolution. It's important to move these things along in a reasonable way, and I actually don't have anything else. Thank you.
Commissioner Bustamante?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Hamilton, and Commissioner Hughes. I am very interested and looking forward to seeing the work that you're doing on the energy storage questions. As former dean at Santa Fe Community College, overseeing the Smart Grid, which was a $21 million grant that was provided to EPSCoR, which is what allows the academic institutions that are not Tier 1 and Tier 2 partner with a Tier 1 or Tier 2 research institution. And Santa Fe Community College, as small of a little peanut as it is, actually was in that mix with New Mexico State, University of New Mexico, and New Mexico Tech. And we established the microgrid, which is now a standing islandable microgrid. So I'm looking forward to what you're doing and knowing that it is our priority, as it should be, to find alternative energy and safe ways of doing that. So I want to thank you both for your good work and putting forward that that's an opportunity to visit the microgrid at Santa Fe Community College. The next thing that is high on my agenda, and before I sound the sirens I hope that we can just take a moment and acknowledge what has happened in Maui and what it really means. It's beyond heartbreaking, and there are a lot of people who would have not expected for an island to have such a catastrophe. So my original and initial priorities when I came to the commission was very much about the community safety and mitigation plans and evacuation plans and so forth. And I think that what we are witnessing, the loss of life and property, is something that can very much happen in any part of our county, and we want to be on top of it. We have an opportunity. I'm sorry that Assistant Chief Hill has left, because I want to acknowledge his good work in always being ready to stand up and work with communities in the interest of preparation. If it isn't a priority for us to get the risk assessment for all of our districts and identify what mitigation measures need to be in place, it should be. When I was the president of the La Cienega Valley Association before my term here, and there had been 2 fires that actually sustained in below freezing temperatures, it became apparent that we needed to look at egress in that small community. That's not the only community that has issues of egress. Had that fire continued the way it would have in any other season, there would have been no way for the people living on that particular road to get out and away from it. So I'm strongly asking for consideration that there is a county-wide hazard mitigation evaluation and strategy that is established to assure that those places with limited or no egress are addressed, that evacuation routes are good and strong. You'll recall a couple of months ago, we actually did an exercise for an evacuation at in La Cienega. It should really happen countywide. We want to be on top of these issues, and it's critical. And I think we're seeing it, and it's not hyperbole, and it's not a bleeding heart sitting here and just saying this is something that we need to do. We don't want to wonder what happened, and all of our parts of our districts have places where fire could start and be sustained. And the question that a lot of people were asking in fire in Maui was, we weren't ever even informed to evacuate. And that's what happens when it's moving fast. So I don't need to belabor it. I just really want to make sure that it remains high on our priority list for those things that the county should continue to move forward with and be aware of, is hazard identification and mitigation. It's critical to our livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bustamante. Yes, I think recognizing the people of Lahaina and the damage that has happened in Maui and the loss of life is shocking. I spoke to a couple of my friends who live on Maui, and luckily they live up in a high enough area where they're not affected, but her daughter owned a restaurant in Lahaina, and all 14 of her employees are alive and safe, but they have no home, they have no place to live. Lahaina was a more inexpensive place to live on Maui, and so many people are really struggling. So I think we need to keep all of those people in our prayers and recognize that FEMA and our federal agencies need to be there working with them. I also want to recognize a few people who passed away in the last couple of weeks. Alice Lattis, I don't know if any of you know who she is, but if I say a few things about the book she wrote that changed women's lives, She wrote this book called The G-Spot. It was quite controversial. When it was written, it's probably still controversial, but she lived here in Santa Fe. She was one of my constituents. She lived at the Commons. She also worked with Eleanor Roosevelt, and she was an amazing woman, and she was 102 when she passed away. So I want to recognize her. I also want to recognize a loss that many people probably have no idea who he is, but David Padua was a friend of mine from the first days that I came to Santa Fe and built and had one of the first Tibetan chortens built in Santa Fe on the Cerro Gordo, which is now Upaya, and a longtime friend. And then on a really kind of much sadder note, one of my dear friends, Christina Prater, lost her second son. Her oldest daughter had died in a shark attack in Tonga in 2005-06. And her son, Xavier Haran, who was also a paraplegic, passed away last week in Costa Rica at a retreat. And so I wanted to recognize those people, and please keep them in your heart. I also want to remind everybody that my Coffee and Tea Under the Trees is coming up on August 26th, and the forest supervisor, Sean Sanchez, will be there along with the coalition to protect the Cajas del Rio Grande and Santa Fe. Both Commissioner Bustamante and I were at a meeting on Friday. Commissioner Bustamante was a panelist, and she represented Santa Fe County very well, and I want to thank her for being there and saying the good words that she had to say, and she was quoted in the paper, which I was very happy to see. So part of the reason Sean Sanchez, who is a forest supervisor, will be there is because in the Caja there is a tremendous amount of Forest Service land. And so I think it's important that besides working with BLM, which I have been doing for years, on the shooting range, which we had our a cooperators meeting this last week, and things are moving forward with the EA for the shooting range near Caja del Rio and out on Buckman Road. I want to thank all the employees who helped organize the employees' picnic. It was a lot of fun. I believe that numerous people got dunked a number of times, including our county manager, including our county attorney, including our procurement director, Bill Taylor. There was a number of people who I saw get dunked in the tank. So thank you for all the employees who helped put that on. And then also thank you to our management team who volunteered to participate in especially being dunked into the tank. Both Commissioner Hughes and I attended a groundbreaking for a new tennis facility out behind Santa Fe County Fairgrounds. The county, that seems to be on county land within the fairground property, so it will add to the recreational complex. On Thursday, the Coalition of Sustainable Communities will have their annual meeting in Bernalillo. The Bernalillo County Commission is hosting. Myself and Commissioner Hughes will be going. And Then on last Thursday, we are not the only ones who had a snafu with noticing. My River Commission meeting that I sit on for the city of Santa Fe also improperly noticed the location of the meeting because they're no longer in the rail yard building. And so we had a very lively discussion about 2 Mile Pond. And what happened there and how the River Commission will be interacting. Is somebody online?
Send me an email and put it in the calendar.
Please mute yourself if you're online. And then last but not least, I want to thank the New Mexican for publishing the brief on the fact that I have been elected president of the Women of NACO, and I also included in our packet my letter from NACO appointing me to the Environment, Energy, and Land Use Steering Committee as a vice chair, Arts and Culture Commission as a vice chair, Healthy Counties Advisory Board, Resilient County Advisory Board, and Rural Action Caucus as a member. I highly suggest that my colleagues who joined me at NACO work to get appointed to committees and choose a steering committee that you want to participate on. There are 10 different steering committees, and I find it really valuable to for me to be on the Environment, Energy, and Land Use. But you know, we all have our specialties. There is a broadband, I believe, steering committee, telecom, and there's a health and human services steering committee. So there's 10 different areas where we can affect federal policy. And that is something that I think is important. Many people don't recognize how much federal policy affects our lives. And so participating in NACO, I find really valuable, not only for myself as a commissioner, but for Santa Fe County. And with that, one of the things that was really pushed at NACO was that we need a federal grant writer, and we need to be looking at all of the money that is coming down out of all of these bills, the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act bill. There's money in many different ways, and I know there's always a capacity issue, but I think if we find money that fills some of our needs, we can hire contractors to work on some of those issues. There are other ways than just besides staff doing some of this work with this federal money, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we should not let it pass by. So I think that a lot of the ideas that I've heard tonight need to be input in our strategic plan so that we can start moving these items forward. That was something that Commissioner Hamilton, myself, started in 2017 with the strategic plan, and I think it's important that we get things in the plan so that we know where we're going and how we're making progress on the things that are in the plan. Because I think it's good to have a plan, but if you don't make progress, there's no point. So with that, my last item is that I think we need to be hiring a lobbyist for, I think this relates to the ICIP coming up, and we need to get a lobbyist on board for the legislature. And I think we need to start thinking about meeting with our legislators and the needs that we want and money that we want from them for this next year. I think that's it at the moment. So I'm going to move on. I mentioned the letter, so we will go on to C, other elected officials' issues and comments. So are there any other elected officials, Olivia, online? And Deputy Clerk, do you have anything you would like to share?
I'll just say briefly that the regular local election is coming up this fall. All of our election staff are in training for it right now, and we are actively taking applications for anybody interested in becoming an election worker. They can access information on our county clerk website. So.
And then, so thank you. Are there any other elected officials online?
Madam Chair, I do not see any other elected officials on WebEx.
Okay, and then I know many of you have heard that the family I have is in Denmark, and two of my relatives are here in the audience from Denmark, Susanna and Kayla. And Kayla is a director of transportation in Denmark, and Susanna worked in the health industry. And so I'm very honored to have them here in my chambers. Thank you. With that, we will go on to matters from the county attorney. Or is that where we're going? Oh, we're going to the public hearing. No, I know it's not quite 5 o'clock, but it doesn't say it has to be after 5, so I believe Max and Brent, I see you here. Please come forward. So this is a public hearing on Santa Fe County Infrastructure and Capital Improvement Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair and County Commissioners. My name is Max Hendren. I am the Capital Planner in the Growth Management Department. And this is a request to conduct the second public hearing for the Santa Fe County's fiscal years 2025 to 2029 Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, and a request from the board to approve the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 25 to 29 ICIP plan. What Brett is handing out at this time is an amended Exhibit A, which accompanies the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 25 to 29 ICIP. And the reason why he is handing out this amended exhibit for you is because while I was entering the information into the database after the August 8th BCC, the ICIP is due to the DFA at August 18th, and so I jumped into the database. I started entering information. I noticed that the information that we were providing on our exhibit is not accurate, especially in the estimated funding gap section. Some of the projects that we entered in the estimated funding gap section was a potential request. So to keep the exhibit consistent, I thought I would go ahead and amend it. If you're interested in knowing the exact amendment, I'd be happy to go over any questions you may have on that. But the county annually updates, prepares, and adopts by resolution and submits a 5-year ICIP to the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration. The ICIP is used to prioritize capital projects over a 5-year span. And the county's ICIP is due to the DFA August 18th. So in August of 2019, the capital planning process was adopted by the board. Through resolution 2019-103, the capital planning process establishes a planning and assessment procedure whereby capital projects can be evaluated, prioritized based on our county's 4 strategic planning goals and the priorities within our sustainable growth management plan, other planning documents, and other considerations. This evaluation process helps the Capital Planning Committee to measure a project's efficacy to achieve the county's goals and priorities. So through this capital planning process, and for the fiscal years 25 to 29 ICIP cycle, new capital projects were scored and they were collected, Then the committee met to add the new capital projects to the previous 5-year ICIP list of capital projects that have funding gaps. This draft 5-year ICIP list was presented to the board on July the 25th. After the July 25th BCC public hearing meeting, the committee met to address the comments from the board and the community. The committee scored all the remaining 4 capital projects that were on the draft 5-year ICIP list, and then sorted all the capital projects on the ICIP list based on basic need first, and then the project score. The capital projects are listed by year and priority for the board to consider. The final list of projects adopted at this BCC meeting will be attached to the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 25 to 29 ICIP, which is the Exhibit A that is in front of you. The DFA requires the county to select the top 5 projects on the ICIP list. Exhibit A includes county staff's priority recommendations, which is created specifically for the upcoming 2024 legislative session. To ensure the needs of each commission district are represented in the county's priorities, staff recommends 1 project per commission district be included in the top 5 capital projects. So in the ranking of these top 5 projects, staff made a good faith effort to rationalize the ICIP, and we placed a higher priority on projects that help eliminate health and safety factors. So the projects that received the highest total score was not always the project the county staff recommended for the commission district. Some considerations were made to capital projects that weighed higher safety factors, like, for instance, a risk associated with a failing septic system and the lack of a community wastewater system versus the risks posed by a low water crossing project. So intermittent risks versus constant risks, and an isolated project versus a community-based project. County staff also considered past capital outlay appropriations and the feedback from legislators, suggesting that water, wastewater, resiliency, and safety-related projects might be looked on as more favorably. Staff also considered ongoing projects to which the county has commitments. And the committee also wants to convey that we are in the process of analyzing the ICIP list for potential federal funding sources and the means to request the grant writing services of our North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. So, as a team, staff recognizes that there are many other recommendations that we could consider, and this reasoning is not the only way that we can prioritize Santa Fe County's ICIP list. But given all of that, county staff recommends the following top 5 projects. Number 1, Agua Fria Village Utility Sewer Expansion Project. Number 2, the Glorieta Village Collection System. Number 3, the Rio and Medio Open Space Restoration and Flood Prevention. Number 4, Avenida Vista Grande Bridge Improvements. And number 5, La Cienega Transportation Safety Study. Staff respectfully requests approval of this resolution adopting the projects for inclusion in the Santa Fe County's Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan for fiscal years 2025 to 2029, authorizing the submittal of the plan to the Department of Finance and Administration, and replacing Resolution 2023-009. But I, along with staff, will stand for questions and comments.
Thank you, Max, for a great presentation. I really appreciate your clarity, and the good presentation, so thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions. I just want to make sure I got it clear. You didn't, between what was put in board docs and what was handed out, you didn't add or subtract any projects? Is that correct?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Hughes, that is correct. We did not add any projects. There are only edits to the estimated funding gap because a lot of the projects that had estimated funding gap was actually the requested amount for the year, and that's a complete separate process. So to keep everything consistent, I made sure that all of the estimated funding gap is the actual funds that we need for our projects.
Okay, so the one you're going to submit is the one that was given to us on paper. Is that, this is the most up to date?
Commissioner Hughes and Madam Chair, yes, with the board's approval.
Oh, yes, as soon as we approve it, of course. And then my other question is, I noticed La Bajada Ranch is on here for a preliminary engineering report. What are we planning to build on La Bajada Ranch?
It looks like it's for roads.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Hughes, this project was brought to my attention. It has been on our list for a while. I can't answer that question. I can look into the scoping sheet and get back with you on that with details.
Yeah, I'm just curious. No rush, so whenever you get a chance.
It does say, Commissioner Hughes, on that it's for roads.
It does?
It does.
Oh, roads, okay.
So,
What do we need roads? Well, anyway, you'll tell me. why we need roads there would be my next question.
If you've
then.
been out to there, you might know why.
Well, I've been by it on the highway, but I'm just curious. So that's all for me, Madam Chair. I'll sit back now.
Okay.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Hughes, I can generally state that my understanding, and Ms. Ellis-Green might be able to shed some light on this as well, that any potential future uses of that property are dependent upon access, and there are some access I mean, that's an obvious statement, but there are some access challenges to the property generally, and so that's the purpose of the PER.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Hamilton?
Yeah, you made a really, well, first of all, it was a great presentation, and I actually really appreciate the fact that you guys went through this and in entering data saw that difference and made the corrections. I think that's just fabulous. It makes it more it also makes it understandable. Like, it's more informative to know what we're looking at, right? It's important for planning. So great job on that. And you made a really important point. You know, there are lots of ways to set priorities for things, right? And so, but the things that you mentioned that you took, anything could be modified if we were, but the criteria you took are very consistent with, in general, our strategic planning and what we've, what we hold as being, pretty important, and I think those criteria hang together as a solid way to make choices, looking at risk in a relative way that, in terms of value to the community and temporal and spatial importance and that sort of thing. So I guess I just wanted to express the fact that I basically agree with most of the approach that's been taken here. And as a result, I think, for this coming year, that the top 5 for 2025 is a very solid list. And, my other just 2.37 cents on item 3, Rio and Medio, that's a great project. And to look at flooding prevention in the upper watershed and that sort of thing, you and I both made comments about types of projects and stuff, and I would sure hope that some of those, that would be a great first place to start thinking about how we manage water upstream of where the flooding occurs. It would be a really useful thing to do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Bustamante?
Thank you, Madam Chair. just now understanding the processes and those things that are on this list, and I'm wondering how this is different, and this is just my learning, this is different from the multiple page one that we received last year, and we have this. Is it that those were removed? Is that a different ICIP list? How do they work together, just for my understanding?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Bustamante, we did remove a lot of projects from last year's list because they were fully funded or they are no longer necessary. We do try to continue to keep the projects that are on the list, moving them forward if they have funding gaps. And then, of course, we had our process of new project requests that were scored and rated and ranked and then added into this list.
Thank you. Madam Chair Max, and yes, it was a great, and I appreciate your help in understanding this process. And for those other projects, because I've had mentioned to you, but some requests to have something put on the ICIP. When we approve this today, does that mean nothing else can go on that? I had asked for the residents in this particular area who are looking for some paving, that they would have to get in on a process that would get them, get their requests evaluated for that purpose. What would be next if they didn't make it in this cut?
Right. Well, Madam Chair and Commissioner Bustamante, we kind of consider this process as a living process. So the committee is going to continue to meet quarterly, even monthly, to evaluate new project requests. We want to. This is a relatively new process, and we're trying to improve the process. So no, not necessarily will these projects not be evaluated and rated. We want to bring this to the board twice a year, so more than likely we're going to bring this to you, to the board again in December with new projects and any other information that we may have to provide the board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Bustamante. Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Max. I've a little bit of a logic question about a few projects that it seems substantially funded and just need a little bit of more money to get over the threshold. And so there's, on the second page they're on out years. So things like the Santa Fe County Clerk's Warehouse. She's gone out and hustled at the legislature to go get most of the money. One, it seems like by the time we get to this project in fiscal year 2028, inflation will have eaten up most of that money. And so I'm wondering if this should be something that's done in the next year, one, that we can fill the gap of whatever the remaining money is in this coming legislative session, and also just to get that project done in the Airport Road facility, some master planning and making that into a priority because the money is substantially there. Second is the Santa Fe Opera wastewater treatment system. They've gotten $5 million or 5 million of their 5.6 million. That's like 80% essentially funded at this point, or 90 to 85% funded. It seems like if we waited 3-4 years to do this, that again, that $5 million would only be worth $3 million, and we would be starting from a substantially deferred spot. Now, I get that there's a reason potentially to defer it because of the potential to do it as a regional project, but I just don't want to see that time eat into the money that's already been put aside for this. I also look at the Espanola Pathways Shelter. They're already starting to spend a lot of that money that they've collected at this point, and the last bit of that money is relatively necessary for completing that project. And so deferring that for 2 to 3 years seems like it would have a project that is halfway completed and not necessarily able to be closed out when they're actively doing it to get it done and move on to the next thing there. There are a few others that are on here that are substantially funded, and I'm wondering if it should be like once something gets over 75% funded, whether it should become a priority to just close it out, right? It should just rise to the top to say this is something that we need to make sure that it gets done in this next year. Otherwise, inflation's just going to eat up that money.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Green, thank you for those comments. This is not the only way that we can prioritize these projects, without a doubt. These projects below the top 5 are sorted by priority, basic need first, and then score from high to low. Yes, absolutely. There are better ways that we can prioritize these projects, and the committee will definitely consider when we go back and review these projects and try to put a better ranking and prioritization to some of these projects based on the comments that we get.
Okay, I thank you very much, because I just see that once we go that far with getting the money, we should just, we're there, right? And that's an easier ask for us to go to the legislature and say, we're just this close, as opposed to, something that's a pretty big ask. If 0% funded is definitely a much bigger ask, even if it's a small ticket item. But if it's a big ticket item, especially on these others that are $5 million and you're 90% there, we should probably be prioritizing those to say, let's just get that thing funded. So anyway, thank you for answering, and I look forward to participating in this in the future. Thanks.
Madam Chair, if I could, and commissioners, this is your list. And so you're not bound by staff's recommendations as to the prioritization. I just want to state the obvious, but if you feel as if any of those projects warrant being rated higher, certainly nothing precludes the board from making that.
If I may.
So also I want to say that we also know that when we go to the legislature, they have their own agenda. And so we might give them this list, and we might say, this is our list. And they might say, oh, I really want to fund this project down here at the very bottom. I mean, that's also one of the things that we come up against. But I do think that the top 5 projects that we have put here are things that we have been working on for quite some time, and that we really need the money for. And the rest of these projects, they fall into different funding places. And by no means does it mean that the clerk won't get more money in this next round, or that we're not working on the Airport Road facility at the same time that we have this list. This is a list that goes to DFA, and then it is a list that has a number, and the fact that it has a number means that it can get money. And it doesn't really matter where it is on the list, and I think those of us who have had experience with the legislature are well aware of that.
That's great. And if I may put those sort of 2 rankings in there to prioritize, is if something is at that 75% funding and it's a significant number, that we should expedite that. And the same thing should be for potentially for small ticket items, things that are under $200,000 or $300,000. Those are sort of easy to be prioritized very relatively quickly from a legislator's aspect. And to your point of the Rio and Medio open space restoration and flooding prevention, that was a priority of Representative Romero and received 0 money from her last year. So we definitely need to put it in front of her to say, this was your project. Let's get some money for that.
Hey, we can make the list and we can lobby for what we want, but they have the purse strings and they write the checks. So I think the more actively we have a lobbyist, we have ourselves out there working with our legislators, the better we can do in getting that. Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I think you made a couple of really good points, and Commissioner Green, you make some what sound like very good points, and sometimes that logic can hold. Something's very close to completion, and that should make it the priority over other things. On the other hand, there are many cases where there are other sources of funding, or that even from the legislature there's going to be there's already a commitment to a certain project and it doesn't need, it's almost like a separate list to have the other top 5, right? Same with the whole idea of low-hanging fruit. Part of the, really small projects, we start making priorities like that. Very often you end up hopscotching projects ahead of things we've been working on for quite a while, and some of them really do, they're bigger projects that can be hard to fund without getting some state support because they are larger projects and they are very important to do for health and safety, as boring as they might be. So I think that while what you're saying has some validity, I think it only works if you look at it in the bigger context. It's not like, to me, it shouldn't be an overriding, like the first elimination, and then other then other criteria applied. But
So what's the pleasure of the board?
Commissioner Hamilton, Mr. Hanson, sorry. I'll move for approval of the ICIP, and I wanted to thank Max specifically for all the hard work she put in on this. I also wanted to say, I agree with you that it doesn't matter so much where it is on the list as long as it's on the list, because by the time the legislature meets, we may, in our heads, reorganize these as well as terms of what's important. And I have always found that the best way to get something funded is to go on the exact day that they're making the decision, because they don't, by that point in the legislature, they can't think back 2 days to what was said to them, but if you get them on the right day, you can get your project funded. But anyway, that's a motion to approve the ICIP as presented.
And I'll second that.
Sorry, my apologies.
Wait a second. I have a county attorney looking at me.
Madam Chair.
You have to do the public hearing, right?
Thank you very much. So before we have a motion, is there anybody from the public who would like to speak about the ICIP list? Is there anybody online that would like to speak to the ICIP list? Hearing none, I am going to close this public hearing. Now, Commissioner Hughes.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the ICIP as presented.
And I will second it again.
Okay, so I have a motion from Commissioner Hughes, a second from Commissioner Green. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, yay. Luckily, you have 4 days to get this uploaded. So thank you, Max, for all your hard work, and we appreciate everything that you have been doing. So grateful.
Thank you, Madam Chair and County Commissioners.
Thank you. Next, matters from County Attorney.
Madam Chair, can I offer a resolution number?
Oh, yeah, one of those.
One of those.
No, thank you.
I'll walk out if you don't need me. I'll go home.
Okay.
All right, 11A is resolution number 2023-088.
Okay, so 88. Okay, next is matters from County Attorney. County Attorney Young, it appears that we have no business after going into executive session, so if we could, is it possible we could include a motion to adjourn at this time and go into executive session and be finished for the evening?
Madam Chair, I don't believe there are any action items after executive session, so if it's a pleasure of the board to adjourn. And I can read the items for executive session.
Okay.
So I would ask that we go into executive session to discuss threatened or pending litigation in which Santa Fe County is or may become a participant as allowed by Section 10-15-1H7 in MSA 1978, specifically including breach of settlement agreement and related agreements related to annexation, Emmons versus Santa Fe County, U.S. District Court, District of New Mexico, case number 123CV00588, and Albilar versus Board of County Commissioners of the County of Santa Fe, First Judicial District Court in Santa Fe County, case number D101CV202301349.
203. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
I so
Can I have a
move.
motion to go into executive session?
I move to move into a executive session for the causes and the reasons that were expressed by the county attorney. And that we adjourn after that.
Can I have a second?
Second. We're all waiting for each other.
I have a motion from Commissioner Green, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. Roll call vote, please.
Of course, Madam Chair. Commissioner Camila Bustamante,
Yes?
Commissioner Justin Green,
Yes?
Commissioner Hank Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Anna Hamilton,
Yes.
and Chair Anna Hanson.
Thank you. We are in executive session.